Welcome to the Missing Ingredient Podcast with CJ Bruce, where food and beverage founders, operators, and experts share the real strategies behind building successful brands. Let's jump into today's show.
Hey, I'm CJ Bruce, and welcome to the show. This is the podcast for founders and leaders of high-impact food and beverage brands who are serious about scaling. Each episode, I sit down with the people who power the food and beverage industry, brand operators, agencies, vendors, creators, and retailers, to uncomplicate strategies that take brands from early traction to serious scale. This episode is sponsored by The Missing Ingredient, a food and beverage marketing agency with over a decade in the industry. We take a different approach, starting with your business goals, looking at the full picture, and building a marketing strategy that actually ties back to growth. From content and performance marketing to influencer partnerships and AI-powered workflows, we're an extension of your team, not just another vendor. Learn more at themissingingredient.com. Now, before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big shout out to Christoph from The Imagists. You can check out their website at theimagists.com, who introduced me to Sara Couch. And now for today's guest. So Sara Couch started the Teach for America program in NYC after graduating from Duke undergrad. After a short-lived career in education policy in Sydney and New York, she made the jump to CPG after deciding to complete her bilingual MBA at IE Business School in Madrid to help her family grow the Splendor Water brand as their general manager in the U.S. market. It's been a roller coaster of wins and learnings ever since, and we will get into some of that today. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Thanks. Glad to be here, CJ. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. And yeah, I should mention that we did work together at the beginning of the Splendor Water, the early days of Splendor Water. So we got some, background.
Part of the early roller coaster. You got to witness it yourself.
Yes, exactly. So let's go start from the beginning. So, teaching in the Bronx in like nonprofit education, and then going into, the beverage world. So maybe just talk a little bit about, that shift and kind of, you were going into education and then decided to make the pivot. So what happened there and how did you make that decision?
Yeah, very, very non-traditional pivot, you would say. But I actually have always been interested more in the health and wellness side. I had studied a lot of integrative medicine and back even in high school and was really interested in it. Did my senior speech on it. Started school at Duke as pre-med, mainly leaning toward going into psychiatry. And that's where I was interested. I majored in psychology and public policy. Made a shift along the way through there to kind of lean more into the public policy side, hence the starting with the Teach for America program, worked at a nonprofit for a while. At that nonprofit in New York, I actually then shifted into development work and fundraising and got a lot more interested in not the work that I was doing so much on the ground with teachers, but actually how the business ran and how they built it, where were we getting our support from fundraisers' interest, and how did we continue to grow this mission beyond, the work that was actually happening on the ground, which is, of course, really important as well. At the same time, I had learned about, actually back senior year of college is when I very first learned about Splendor Water, and my family was introduced to it when we were down in Colombia. My mother's Colombian, and my grandmother was sick with Alzheimer's at the time. She was really, no longer in her body much, not very verbal. And so we had gathered as a family to sort of just let her know we were at peace for her passing on, trying to kind of encourage her soul, if you will, to leave her body. And one of a good family friend of ours who is a functional doctor and is a part of a group of functional doctors across Latin America and Spain that they've deemed as sintergética, but essentially integrative medicine, all traditionally trained doctors, but that also use a lot of, work with energy therapy, Reiki, work with really high quality food and organic water. They had actually invested in Splendor, and that's where we first learned about it. So one of the doctors who led this ceremony for my grandmother had different elements of the fact that we're all connected in the world and all one, had representations of, water, air, ether, and the representation that he had for water in this ceremony that we did was a bottle of Splendor. serendipitously, my father, despite being divorced from my mother at the time for 15 years, had come down to be a part of this ceremony with my grandmother and said, what is that blue bottle? Got very interested in it. Initially invested, and it's a much longer story how we then ended up overall acquiring the company. So we are not original founders, certainly pay homage to the original founders, which I can share more about as well. But fast forward to when I was at the nonprofit in New York, a lot had been going on behind the scenes in terms of growing Splendor in Ecuador before then. And I started helping out on the side while working at this nonprofit to help organize us for a launch in the U.S. market. We did, with Christoph at the Imagist, a lot of rebranding at the time, actually explored different names, a lot of prep work to initially launch the product in the US during 2020 on e-commerce. The pandemic, of course, gave some challenges to that launch timeline. So we ended up actually bringing it to market in 2022. But I, having studied psychology, public policy, nothing about business, did decide that I needed some sort of way to educate myself, no e-com background, no CPG background, of course, which I now know the best education is while you're actually doing it. But within the first year, while we were mostly e-commerce based and remote, I did complete the bilingual program in Madrid. I grew up bilingual, speak Spanish, of course, because of my mother's side, but didn't have Spanish, concretely in my business vocabulary. So that was why it was also a 1-year program, really phenomenal fit for my needs. And of course, Madrid's a wonderful city. So that's why that program for me was the best. And it was definitely a roller coaster year. As you remember, you were still with me that time, trying to run the business and school at the same time. So, have since been back and just venturing now into retail in the last couple of years in a more meaningful way with Splendor. So it's exciting beyond just the launch timeline. There's, as you probably know, speaking to a lot of brands, a lot of years that went into growing it before actually bringing it to market. Yeah,
absolutely. Appreciate that background. And we're definitely going to get into some of these pieces. So I think let's go into the establishing of the brand. So you mentioned, without getting into the details of, acquiring the company, and you had that, and now there was some existing branding. So you just talk about, the distinct identity of Splendor, because I think there's a lot of great elements in there. And just how did that, talk about a little bit about that process, like what went into that? How did you land on the current identity? Take us into that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So Splendor has actually been a brand in Ecuador, very small in the first 10 to 15 years, since 2001. So I mentioned our family has really been instrumental in growing it. We love it like our own, but we were not the original founders. It was actually first founded by a man named Guillermo Sotomayor back in the 80s, kind of accidentally. He was a scientist, excavator, really in the area that we're from to search for rich minerals like gold and silver. And his daughter at the time was ill. She was terminally ill, had meningitis, and he had a dream to bathe her in the springs on his land, which is now the Splendor plant and the spring itself, and give her this water for several weeks on end. And she ended up getting better. So he then kind of completely pivoted his life's mission, believing that this was inertly a healing water, and wanted to get it out to the world. Of course, we're careful in terms of that, but we deeply believe that this water is very special as well. He then later went on to study what was in the water, why these functional minerals, what was it that was so special about it, and found that it is one of the only sources in the entire world that has where the water picks up natural colloidal gold and silver. So it starts its filtration naturally atop the Cotopaxi volcano, and then the spring itself and the artesian source is in La Mana, Ecuador, which is at the foothill of the Andes rainforest. So a little bit of where the water comes from, but he decided to bottle it and was actually under a different name, La Mana Water, there in that local community for the first 15, 20 years before selling it off to the new owner and it becoming the brand Splendor. So she's really grew it just locally for the first 10 to 15 years, was actually in a place where she was going to sell it off to a different, owners in the area until the group of doctors that I mentioned previously came in and actually decided that they wanted to be a part of it, help invest in the company and grow it prior to my family getting involved. When we did so, the prior identity branding, again, it was Splendor, the name, but very focused on the gold and silver aspects. So just kind of like, not to be just sort of elementary and beginning branding, right? Never with the intention of necessarily like scaling this to other markets, despite that being Sotomayor's like initial mission to get this out to the world. And so when we first started to look at elevating that a little bit, we wanted to ensure that the backstory of the water, the unique kind of mystical story got told. One fun fact as well is that Sotomayor in this area, that is again the plant, when he first discovered the water, also discovered a tunnel of 300 plus unknown artifacts. A lot of these artifacts, we actually don't know how they got to this area and the source. A lot of them had writings like Sanskrit or patterns or likeness to Southeast Asian culture, so no business being in like the Incan culture. So our whole brand story really has a lot of mystique, and again, we believe that indicates ancient civilizations also flocked kind of to this area, this source. So that's what we wanted to communicate, that in the pyramid and the logo and all of the visuals of the brand, a bit of sort of just intrigue, as well as, of course, be clear around the gold and silver and the unique elements that this brand does have that no other water really in the world does. At the time of starting to think about bringing this over to the US, Splenda, the artificial sweetener, was pretty hot. So that was a bit of a contentious point in terms of the name itself. We actually, looked at so many different names, trying to honor the kind of Incan history of our source. We're trying to incorporate subtly elements of healing without, of course, making claims, knowing that that's something to be very careful of with FDA regulations and all, worldly regulations, but FDA being one of the strictest. So for a very short period, we actually did change the name to Health 2.0, and the typography of that was designed to look like the word heal plus H2O, so heal plus water, so that we subliminally were talking about, the health of it, the healing, without, of course, making any direct claims. We started with, my family also has a grass-fed beef farm and a natural products market in Summerfield, North Carolina. We slowly started to export the product just there and sell it kind of locally in North Carolina and in that product. So many early day customers might know and have some old Health 2.0 bottles out there and still know it, but in that same time frame and over the course of those kind of 5 to 10 years, the brand was growing in Ecuador and becoming a household name as Splendor. So we eventually came to a crossroads of saying, okay, we need a brand that we're going to grow internationally one day, we hope, and we need consistent brand identity. We don't want to confuse the Ecuadorian market, which is really our home market and, how everyone knows, and the lifeblood of the brand itself. So we ended up changing it back to Splendor. But the Buy Health 2.0 that you'll see on any bottle underneath the Splendor sort of stayed as an homage to the Health 2.0 name that was short-lived, but also as a potential umbrella company branding, if you will, if we do end up bringing out other products. The doctors themselves have great, visions around having Splendor as the base of a lot of their medical tinctures that they use today. So Health 2.0 may one day be other parts of the product, but right now it's basically an homage to that name that was short-lived in the U.S. market before it went back to Splendor.
Nice. Yeah, it's such a rich brand story. Just the background and the depth of it, and
there's a lot of layers. It's hard to speak in a short form about it, as you can see from my long-winded answers.
But it's good. I think it's having tried the product, it's a delicious water in itself, and then you scratch a little bit and there's more and more to it at every level, and as deep as you want to go. So I think there's a lot of value in that, in having that. curious to go into the formats of packaging. And you have, the beautiful bottle and glass bottle as well. And so curious about, as you think about, I know like when we were working together too, there's a lot of the plastic, recycled plastic, the sustainability side of it. So just, can you talk a little bit about, the decisions around the actual packaging itself and, maybe some trade-offs that you had to make in that, and take us into that decision a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So bottled water in and of itself, right, I think is one to be extremely conscious about, just because there's such a conversation around water itself. Our main purpose always is to maintain the integrity of the water in every aspect of our bottling process, from the beginning of the source to the bottle itself. And with that, we've explored, a lot of options. Still, and can share some of the future ones that we're thinking about as well. When we first got involved, initially Splendor was just being packaged in plastic, both in the sparkling and the still. When we first started bringing it over to the US, we were exporting both. We found that the shelf life and the ability to stay carbonated and sparkling for long on the sparkling and plastic was really difficult. So we started to just keep that. That actually does still exist in Ecuador now. But we're still in tests of whether or not the shelf life in the plastic sparkling will last, now that we are moving faster. But that was a strategic decision to just sort of, in the beginning, export only still, while we were only in the plastic. But we were always exploring glass, mainly from a taste and integrity of the water perspective, and also, of course, from a sustainability perspective, but mainly in consumer choice. I think people have really become educated themselves on the potential dangers of plastic in terms of consumption and microplastics. Obviously, there's the much larger conversation around sustainability of plastic, which is a nuanced one, right? Because I think plastic is often painted as much better and the worst, but there's a lot of differences in terms of how plastic is built, created, reused, how much energy it takes to produce as opposed to glass, how reusable it is in certain municipal counties. So we have strategically, therefore, kept the plastic as an option, simply because glass, unfortunately, is not always applicable to all situations, right? We do a lot of outdoor type of events. When people are going to the gym or by the pool, glass is not necessarily safe and or always allowed in certain situations. It's also much heavier and more difficult to ship and to produce, right? We reuse all our glass bottles. We do have both for the glass and plastic in Ecuador, a whole bottle reuse and retake back program. So our large format plastic bottles are reusable 20 plus times. The glass ones are reusable 60 plus times. But to recreate that take back program in the US and other markets, and also be mindful of our carbon footprint, of course, not sending them all the way back to Ecuador to be reused, is something that takes more time. And so actually the production of glass in terms of carbon footprint is often a deeper impact than the production of plastic, especially if it's the type of plastic that we use. So knowing that plastic was sort of a necessary choice to maintain for us, at least for now, we have really been intentional around the plastic that we create. It is 100% recycled PET, 100% recyclable again. It does have a firm structure so that it can be reused and that there's not risk of it breaking down, right? A lot of people are touting brands that are using less and less plastic, but often a lot of those bottles that are kind of flimsy plastic, especially in clear, are much faster to break down, and actually a lot more of the ones that are leaching and a bigger cause of microplastics, despite the sustainability. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in terms of the health aspects and the sustainability aspects within the plastic world. So keeping a firmer bottle that is also, of course, being mindful of not being subject to light, heat a lot. The blue bottle in itself is a good protection of the water for that sense. If you think about beer being in green or brown bottles, it's really designed to help the structure and molecule of the water stay intact as it was from its source. So it's pretty, and it's a brand identity function, but the blue in itself is actually very functional for the protection of the quality of the water. Both, and so that will remain in glass, plastic, aluminum, anything that we do. So my ideal scenario really would in the future be to have plastic, glass, aluminum options, so that really it's then up to the buyer, right? Dependent on the activity that you're doing, what it is you need the water for that day. You can make your choice whether or not it's a sustainability aspect that's more important to you, whether it's the health aspect that's more, and us just be really transparent as a brand of like, these are the pro cons of each. They all have pros and cons and all the packaging choices. And then really it's up to you. So aluminum is one that we're certainly discussing. It's difficult to maintain the taste quality of the water in aluminum. There's a lot of great brands doing aluminum, from a sustainability perspective, but even those, it's hard to find high quality aluminum that's not actually lined with plastic, and not therefore that's still recyclable. So despite it being kind of marketed as the most sustainable choice, the reality of that is a lot more nuanced in terms of what's actually reusable, and to make sure that it doesn't affect, again, the taste or the quality of like what's in the bottle.
Interesting. Yeah, such a nuanced conversation. It's so many, again, many layers, many decisions.
Yes.
I think it's smart to, get the options and get it all on the table so you let consumers decide.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I want to shift a little bit into, growth of the brand, and, things have evolved over the years. And I want to start with just the channel, so sales channel. So in early days, you mentioned, and when we worked together, like heavily D2C focused. Now, shifting more into retail. And so can you just talk a little bit about, how you think about the channel and the channel strategy and how that's evolved a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, materials play into this big, right, in terms of shipping, parcel, glass, plastic. I should mention, too, we are now exporting the sparkling in the glass. We've chosen, we did find through a lot of testing that the sparkling upholds its carbonation for a lot longer, a year plus in the glass bottle. So that's why our sparkling is right now only available in the glass, but we are looking at, availability of bringing that over in plastic as well, since we are able to do it in Ecuador. We first, I think, as I mentioned, we initially launched the brand just on e-commerce. Our retail, which I'll get into, is very difficult. It's very data driven, especially in larger stores. So in order for us to be able to build up a bit of foundational data and sales to go and show these retailers and buyers, hey, look at what we're doing, the traction that we've been able to create ourselves on our own channels. We also have subscription options and services. So our returning customer rate is really impressive with that. And just the data that we were able to show as a very new brand in some of these conversations from building out first our e-com channel really gave us an edge, and not showed that we weren't really just starting from scratch, right? And we were, through you all, through our PR partners, actually doing a lot of marketing. We built a whole brand identity and pushed sales prior to even trying to go to retail. So that was the strategic decision to start via e-commerce, and also really to just like test and learn in terms of customer feedback. Were they liking the materials? How were we going to do the glass? We actually, because the glass was delayed in supply chain over COVID for 9+ months, the glass production, we said, let's just launch, let's start in the plastic alone, and then we can sort of intro the glass as a new product, which was good that we did, because we would have waited around for another year in the end had we not gone ahead and launched. But the idea was to have them both at the same time. So we first built that, and then again started bringing on some consultants to help us decide how to build the retail business. Again, our family this is not our background. We're very humble in that we don't really know what we're doing. We're learning as we go. And within the natural channel, I would say there are two predominant distributors that really hold the key to a lot of the like store shelves outside of just regional markets. And they can be challenging to work with just because you have to be a certain level to even get in. There are all types of different fees that go into their structure. And depending who you talk to, they would really encourage you to go, outside of those with other like more regional partners to begin, which we did start building. But truthfully, looking back, we're now working with KeHE, one of those two big ones. And the doors that get opened for you upon just starting to work with them is a huge game changer. So I think I would have probably fast-tracked actually trying to work with those two quote-unquote necessary evils, if you will, sooner than what we tried. I think we, upon trying to go into retail, thought that we would have better success with potentially direct business. We built this e-commerce side. We thought we had so much to show, but ultimately we didn't have any shelf sales to show yet. And that's really what a lot of these bigger retailers and competitors want to see. It's a risk for them to be first to bet on you, right? Despite you having a successful business online. So we did start working with some regional distributors, both in the North Carolina area, Southern California. They've been great partners. We're still working with a majority of them, not all, but I would really say that we launched with KeHE in October of last year. That's when we started selling with Sprouts nationwide. And the doors and ability and just sort of looks that we're getting since that, it really feels like we're in another level of our brand at this stage.
That's awesome. Yeah, the curious digging into the rollout a little bit, because I think Southern California, if I remember correctly, were Erewhon, right? And
yes.
So you had that. So talk a little bit about that, the kind of rollout strategy, or I mean, you mentioned, in hindsight, you'd go start with the big ones first, but was there benefit in having the, some smaller regional, or even, Erewhon feels also very brand aligned. And then that, helping to tell that retail story to help get that broader distribution. Can you talk a little bit about that background?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, let me caveat, that's more in the distribution. I think regional markets, and again, regional distributors, therefore, do play a big part. So it's a little bit of the chicken and egg scenario, right? But Erewhon was actually our first kind of well-known retailer that we went to market for. We were fortunate in that their review process is quite simple, straightforward, especially for a water. They do require a lot of organic certifications and certifications on the food side that I think can be a little more challenging for a new brand on the food side. But of the reviews that we've done, perhaps because it's so brand aligned as a market, right, I have to say it was one of the easiest. And big shout out to Erewhon. I wish all retailers were like them. Just the transparency of the data, the opportunity that you get to market with them and be in different pop-ups and scenarios is really great, and they're a fantastic retailer to work with. Obviously, marketing to a very niche market that doesn't ultimately get to a majority of shoppers around the country and meet our long-term goals of being accessible and available, getting this water to the world. But starting with especially a well-known brand like Erewhon was fantastic. I'd say Southern California is our hero market right now. It just is such a well-aligned market with our brand, and so open to, I think, high quality products, that they're label readers, that people also, I think, a little bit more open to our esoteric backstory, if you will, and the mystique of the product. So we've now, since Erewhon, I think, others like Bristol Farms came on through that regional distributor. So we work with High Touch there regionally. Shout out, they've been a great regional partner. They're the ones that service right now, Erewhon and Bristol Farms. We are now through KeHE also in Pavilions. Lassen's, a lot of just regional Southern California markets, and are able to knock down some of those doors in other regional places. Like I said, since being with KeHE as well. But it's tough, right? I think the service, even on the retailer side, that they get from regional partners is more curated. They're there more often. There's lower barriers to entry in terms of the amount of product they have to drop off at each time. So there's certainly benefits to both. And I think the perfect puzzle does involve both, big players and small players, but it's hard as a small brand to, I think, build those piecemeal, piece by piece, without having to have your own team internally too that's really supporting those. At the end of the day, there's merchandising tools out there. We have some great ones as well that we use that are checking up on shelves, but without having to grow out a big internal team, it's difficult to manage a lot of regional partners and also ensure that they're going to be backing your brand as much as you would be if it were you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's actually a good transition. The next question I would talk about is staffing and resourcing. So you have, thinking about, internally versus externally, working with partners, bringing on internal team. Like, how have you, obviously that's evolved over the years too. So how do you approach that? How do you think about that? Like, when are you working with a consultant versus when you bring someone in-house? What stage does that happen? How has that evolved as the brand has evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, I will say I don't think I have the perfect answers or the perfect mix yet. It's always evolving. But we do have a really good team right now that everyone's very bought into the product and the story. I think that's the most important part, right? It's people that are bought into what it is we're trying to build. We're not just, in our minds, right? We're not just selling water here. We're really trying to change the world, and we're deeply in belief that this water can do that. And so I think, especially with the unique backstory and people getting excited about that, that's the number one thing I look for in a partner or a team member. But to answer your question in terms of how it started, how we've evolved, as you know, we did just really start with, it was me and one other full-time team member based kind of in North Carolina, doing a bit of everything on the marketing, sales, direct, building out campaigns and supporting you all in review of everything. In terms of in-house, only two of us. We had you all as a digital marketing partner, a PR partner at the time, which we evolved from really to bring people in-house after a couple of years, because we found, especially on the content and marketing side, to have someone that's like fully focused on your brand at all times and be really thinking about that was important to me. We actually continue to work with Christoph at the Imagist as like a brand partner, that he's been evolved with us because we're now doing a lot of external events and we've brought in a couple large partnerships over the past couple of years. We worked with the Inter Miami soccer team last year. We've worked with Lifetime Fitness over the last 2 years, the high-end gyms. They put on a number of athletic events across the country that are a lot of energy and effort from a resource and just like team perspective. So we've got an events manager now in-house to help support that, so that we didn't have to outsource a lot of the production of those big events, which can get quite costly. But that was critical. So we've got Asia, who's been a fantastic addition to the team to oversee that on the marketing side. And as we started to head into retail, again, I think we were a little naive on the distribution side, that as we first garnered the first couple distributors, it was like, the product was going to sell itself. And we quickly realized that was not the case. You have to be out there supporting them, doing ride withs, selling the product, training even, restaurants of brand new water. There's a lot to talk about here, as you see, and sort of train, whether it's on a shelf or at a restaurant, or like, how do you accurately sell and succinctly sell all the benefits and the attributes of this water. So we were, through another consultant and advisor of ours, introduced to our first hire on the sales team, who came from a water background, fantastic, on both the West Coast and East Coast. So we do now have 2 full-time hires and sales directors who have sort of split the country and oversee the whole Eastern U.S. and Western U.S., and an advisor. We worked a little bit with a broker as we were trying to get into the more natural channel distribution. We worked more directly with her in an advisory capacity now, so she helps oversee the sales team. So we've honestly done a lot of like non-traditional hiring. I will say our team has evolved, I think, based on connections our advisors have had, connections through our partners, determining in the day to day, really what our needs are, and the extent of those needs, and that's constantly changing, right? I'd say that now venturing into retail, hence the conversation that picked up with you, realizing that there's all these new marketing channels on like Instacart, Albert's. Every retailer now has its own digital way of advertising that's completely different from what we've been doing on the paid media or digital marketing side for e-commerce with Meta, Google, et cetera. And I have limited knowledge of that, but we need someone that's an expert, like that really knows what they're doing, to get in there and set it up well versus just wasting time trying to kind of like, I don't know, set things and see how they do. Like I have learned over the course of the year, and I think course of the years with Splendor, that at least from a marketing perspective, it is very difficult for everyone to be an expert at everything, right? And I kind of see the value in having niched out buckets of marketing and people who really are in their expertise is in that lane. I think I was naive to that in the beginning, but as far as marketing, I see the value in that, and I think that having an in-house team that's still small enough and manageable enough for myself now being a kind of sole leader on the US side anyways, is critical as well, just for I'm starting to now learn the balance of my own work-life balance, mental health, and despite how wonderful our team is, managing people always comes with a whole other set of of responsibilities, right? And time and energy and effort. And so we've had to ebb and flow in terms of the number. That's the sweet spot, and we're about 10 right now, and I think that's a really good place to be.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you going into detail, and it's helpful to hear just the evolution. It is something continually revisiting, and as as the business changes and the needs change and the resources change, evolving your staffing and team and partners makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I want to pick up on you just mentioned work-life balance. And I want to get into that a little bit too. And just, you're now managing this brand, and, it's a lot of times from the outside, people are like, oh, well, you're running this brand and that's so cool and interesting. But there's always, a lot that goes into the day to day and trade-offs. And so just to touch a little bit on that, the emotional side of it, and, ups and downs and how you manage that, or even touching on what you just mentioned. And, maybe it sounds like maybe too much work, and then bring back the work-life balance. And so how do you handle that, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, I will say, I think having the right team and really right leadership in place, I'm learning is the key to help me sort of check myself on, okay, what is our strategy? What is our roadmap? Like, is the strategy we've set correct? Let's also think about, it's hard when you're in it day to day, at least for me personally, to get out of we got to do all these different things and zoom out to the 1,000-foot view of, do we have to do all these things? Are these the right things? And what are we, constantly measuring against ROI and what is impactful? And, we've had a couple of pivotal years and big partnerships, events, and on-site things. I've really, as I said, take a lot of energy. So I'm trying to be more strategic around where we're having almost sprints around high busy peak areas, especially when it's seasonally important for water, and rest for the team. I know that that's something that we're focused on, and the team is very important, especially after these big weekend events that we'll have. But I'd say, again, leadership and having a little bit of, honestly, a filter of keeping me so out of the weeds. I can get very detail oriented sometimes. And it's hard for me to learn and accept that that's often not the best use of my time. My brain really needs to be on the strategy and communicating to the team sort of what is our vision, where are we headed, this is where we're tracking, and making sure that those through lines of communication across marketing and sales and now finance operations are all very clear, and that everyone's marching in the right direction, rather than getting bogged down in sort of the day-to-day and what needs to be done in the oversight. So I think, again, leadership on each side to help support those things has been critical for me. And Sleep, I don't know. Like sleep is very important. And no, honestly, like not to go back to the water itself, but like the hydration and the quality of what you're putting into your body and how you're treating your body is the foundation for everything. No matter how busy things get, I think protecting your mind, making sure that I go outside ahead of every day now and like take a walk and just actually meditate a bit and really sort of remind myself of the purpose of why we're all here and making sure that I remind myself of where we're headed, why are we doing this? Because in the day-to-day, despite how beautiful our story is and how much I deeply believe in this product and feel that it's like a calling and it brings together both sides of my family, like I'm in it, right? But in the day-to-day, of course, there's moments that I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is, what are we doing? And so I think having the reminder of that, like honestly, on a daily, weekly basis, and just being grateful for how we got into this and the fact that my family gets to play a role in bringing this incredible product to market and to the world is really important. And I don't know that I do that enough for my team, truthfully. They probably would want more of that, but I think I'm constantly working on my leadership and like listening to leadership podcasts, just understanding how I can grow and be better and also learning so much from them, right? So many of our team has way more experience than me and everything that they've done in the past and learned. And so keeping a really open mind that like I don't want to be the smartest person in the room often, like really they should be leading me. I should be constantly learning from them, providing direction and a sense of like marching together, but also really bringing people to the fold that are incredible workers and extremely smart and ready to take things on and help alleviate, the stuff that takes up my brain space every day. I think it's really about the people and working in tandem together.
That's awesome. No, I appreciate you going into that. I think it's really helpful for everybody to hear and to think about as you do get stuck in the day-to-day of things and in the weeds. So thanks for digging into that. I want to just a couple more questions. I think wanted to touch on AI. So asking everybody about this question. So it's, AI is definitely changing the way that we work. Changing the way people find products, changing a lot of things about the world. So I'm just curious, how is AI showing up in your business and your work and your life, and how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, so day to day, I'd say we really mainly use AI just for efficiencies in our work. Again, truthfully, there's probably so much more that we could be doing in AI, but a lot of what we've had to, especially this year and last year, we've had to tailor, for example, retailer submissions. To be very strictly, a lot of these retailers are often using, because they get so many applications per year from products, of course, using AI to also help sift through layers of when they're evaluating products. So knowing that, we have to strategically build out our submissions to ensure that they are AI compliant, that there were like to the T following exactly what they say, so that we're not weeded out by one of these reviewers. So that's something that's applicable in how we're thinking about things. And then, a lot of different tools in terms of what we're looking at with marketing now. A lot of marketing, as you well know, in and of itself, that's more PR-based or article or even events, right? Like it's a lot of awareness driving, but when it gets down into the nitty-gritty of how to measure the ROI or the true impact of that, tools become more difficult. So there's a few ones that we're looking at now to better integrate, for example, when we're in content out there on the internet or at events and being captured, how they can sort of capture our bottle in images to like count the number of, even if it's not a like or a mention or whatever, like the number of views in different ways that we're showing up in these events, or otherwise like marketing style things that are hard to measure. So that's something that we're looking at right now. And of course, just, for efficiencies of like writing content, writing our press releases, emails, all of that, the team is using those to their, one of my pet peeves as a leader I've shared with my team is like, obviously using that to assist in all work, but to really maintain like the critical thinking and sifting through to ensure everything is well brand aligned. And true to our voice, right? But I think it's been an incredible tool in terms of just efficiencies and the ways that we can like turn things around. We've got a lot more to learn, and truthfully, there's probably so much more we could be doing that will be part of the strategy sessions in terms of how we build out further efficiencies.
We've developed a method, or craft method, as we're calling it, TMI craft method, of basically how do we work with AI. And I think exactly what you said, and how do you incorporate the human element, make sure that you actually have, the checks and balances, things stay on brand, all of that. Anyway, I could send you a link, only in the show notes too, just as a reference. I think it's relevant to what you were just talking about.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Running on time, so I do want to quick question before we wrap up. Outside of Splendor, I'm curious if there are any brands in food and beverage that you think are doing great work that maybe could use some more attention that they're not getting.
Yeah. So I have to shout out, there's a few different great brands that we, from people I graduated from Duke with, a few women-led brands that we are kind of have a little group that we can speak to one another, ask all the crazy questions that you feel like you should know, but often don't, right? And it's like not afraid to. So a couple of those are One Trick Pony, led by Lucy Dana. They're actually doing great. They're recently launched Whole Foods, Sprouts. They're really seeing a lot of success in retail as well, Frasco. So doing really well. It's a peanut butter brand based with Argentinian peanut butter, or peanuts and just salt. So also a family-owned company. They're doing fantastic. Another one of those is Angel Oak Smokehouse. That's also a family-led brand from my friend Jade. She is based in Charleston. Her and her husband started this brand based on her family history of her father smoking salmon. So they're based out of Charleston. Also just launched Whole Foods regionally. So seeing a lot of success within their first year. And she's also considering the e-com play. So a little bit smaller, but seeing some great traction in their initial year as well. And then Buffy Protein is led by Audrey Melville, another friend of ours. Actually, we're in the same sorority together, so somehow it's all aligned in the CPG world several years later. But she is doing cottage cheese-based like protein and buffalo dips, so like a healthier version on a lot of different dips there at Buffy Protein that are high in protein and just a much healthier option. So also seeing a lot of great early traction. They're a bit smaller than the other two, but those are some fantastic brands that I've been trying, and just, of course, so proud of the women behind them and what they're doing and building.
I love it. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so we'll wrap up. We got one last question. So just before we do that, just want to point people to the website. So splendorwater.com, and obviously follow on the socials as well, Instagram. And is there anywhere else you want to point people to, or anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, we did make you a special missing ingredient discount code, so I'll share that with you for in the show notes. But TMI 15, if you want to check us out on splendorwater.com, you can use that special code for 15% off your first order. We are also doing a lot of exciting website revamp right now, so be on the lookout now for our store locator, which is launched on there. You can find all the different stores that we're located in now on our website. Most of our handles, our Instagram handle is at Splendor Water. We also have all new store launches coming out there monthly. Couple new NYC locations coming out in May. All the Food Town locations. We're now in Gristedes and D'Agostino's there. Like I said, Sprouts nationwide. Erewhon, a lot of regional markets. Anything depending where you are, you can now search. That was a big labor of love on the website that recently launched. And then at Splendor Water on socials.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we've got within that discount code, you can also check out subscriptions. It's 15% off subscriptions. Like I said, we do glass bottles. We ship them. It is challenging, but yes, we do ship glass bottles, and our plastic from like a 16.9 ounce up to a 1.5 liter. So really a lot of optionality for any place, day, time of the day that you might need Splendor, because we really encourage it to be a daily hydration ritual, right? It's an amazing water, amazing health benefits in and of itself with the gold and silver functionality. And so, yeah, check us out, and you can have us at any and all times at dinner parties or, when you're heading to the gym.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sara. We've been talking to Sara Couch, General Manager of Splendor Water. Be sure to check them out, splendorwater.com, and use your discount code TMI15. Sara, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks, CJ. Good to see you.
Thanks for listening to the Missing Ingredient podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.